It's finally Friday. It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
All right, welcome back to the Friday Show. I'm Scott Jagow along with Ray Paulick. We're glad to have you with us. Coming up, we'll talk about that track announcer change at Santa Anita. But first, Ray, as we're reporting this, there are reports out there that NYRA is considering lengthening the Saratoga meet next year and shortening the weeks to 5-day weeks. What do you make of that?
Well, I like the idea of 5-day weeks. Saratoga is the last track that has raced 6 days a week. Del Mar was racing 6 days a week, and the horse shortage, the reduction in the foal crop, made it impossible to keep going at that schedule. I don't know how the racing office at Saratoga has been able to keep up the quality to the level it has been. I mean, there has been a drop off in quality, I think, over the recent years. 6 days a week is a grind. So, I think it's a good thing. The bigger question for me really is not what happens in 2019, but what's going to happen down the road, because this probably has something to do with the construction of a hockey arena at Belmont Park and changes at Belmont Park. We don't know what those changes are going to be yet, and will this be eventually a 2-track circuit with Belmont in the New York City area, Saratoga upstate, and no aqueduct?
Yeah, I think immediately the 5-day week is a no-brainer. As you said, they've kind of kept up the quality, but you could have full fields and more races if you go back to 5-day weeks. And I think that's great for the handicappers. That's great for the horsemen with the grind. That's perfect. And a little bit longer Saratoga meet is great too. Now the question is, how much longer could it go and still sustain its boutiqueness? If stretched out to 2 months, would that still be sustainable, viable, something people would want, or even longer? You've got people that rent out their houses during that time period because they can make a lot of money. So how would that change? Would they consider maybe having 2 meets like Del Mar's doing, where you maybe a late spring or something like that? Because you do have to consider the weather. Del Mar has the advantage of year-round great weather. Saratoga does not.
Yeah, I've wondered that. Could they have a second meeting at Saratoga? I don't think you can do it late in the year like Del Mar does because of those early snowfalls. But in the springtime, that could be a possibility. But if it does come down to 2 tracks, and I think it will eventually, you can't race it. I don't think you can race at Belmont too long, because it's just it's going to be like a racing factory instead of a great place, a great park like it is now. So they've got some big issues to decide at the New York Racing Association, and hopefully they'll do the right thing. Saratoga, you don't want to have a meeting where there's 5,000 people there on a weekday, because Saratoga is special. You want to walk into that place and feel a buzz, and that's the way it is now. So you can't, kill the goose that laid the golden egg.
Yeah, and that's the issue racing is facing right now in general is, these meets that are the shorter ones are the ones that are most popular, the Keeneland, Del Mar, Saratoga, and then the tracks that are running year round, some of them are less appealing and have 5 people in the stands on a Wednesday, so you don't want to go in that direction. And racing is contracting in general rather than expanding. So I think they're going to have to keep it a balance there with Saratoga. What do you think about this idea? We have a poll on the website about it. Do you think it's a good idea to lengthen the meet and shorten the weeks? Let us know at PaulickReport.com. In other news this week, Ray, we had the announcement that the track announcer at Santa Anita is no longer Michael Rona. It's going to be Frank Miramati now. And this generated a lot of debate, as these things usually do. You got any intel as to why this happened?
No real intel, but the one thing I do know is that when Michael Rona was hired to replace Trevor Denman, who reduced his schedule, he's just calling the 2 Del Mar meetings now. When he was hired, there was different management running Santa Anita. They had a tryout. They had several announcers come out and call the races, and I think it came down to Michael Rona and Frank Miramati. And at the time, they decided with Michael Rona, but at that time it was Joe Morris and I think John Parada were the two people running Santa Anita. They are no longer there. Tim Ritfo is now in charge. He's the COO of the Stronach Group that owns the track. And probably like a lot of managers in other areas, he wanted his own team. And so he looked at it and he said, I'd rather have Frank. It came down to those two a couple years ago. I'm looking at this thing now, and I'd rather have the other guy.
Yeah. And from a fan standpoint, and there's been a lot of debate on our website about this, it's usually so individual. I mean, there are people who love Frank Miramati. There are people who don't like listening to him. Same with Michael Rona. His accent is unique and specific, and some people like it and some people don't. Some people love the way he calls the races, compliment highly about that, and same with Frank. So it's just like announcers in any sport. You hear things, some people get irritated by certain accents or certain ways people talk, and it's just going to be that way.
Yeah, there's probably, you can watch a football game on Fox or CBS and not know who the announcers are, but I just kind of remember the day, if you were watching Monday Night Football, you knew who Howard Cosell was, and you could either love him or hate him. I kind of, when I hear a race call, I don't care about accents or phrasing. I just want, an accurate call, and I judge a race caller, not by the phrasing or whatever, but if I'm not watching the race and I'm just listening to the call, can I tell what's going on in the race? Just describe the race, let me know what's going on, and be accurate. That's all I care about. I don't really care how fancy they are. Whether or not they come up with a unique phrase and make you laugh or whatever. Although Miramati's impressions are pretty funny. Yeah. I think some people make too big of a deal of a track announcer. The one thing when they hired Frank, they did say they wanted someone to be more involved in the community, more involved with the horse players. And we've seen Frank in action at Oaklawn Park a few years ago when he was there. He's a great person to go out in the community, and he's a funny guy. He's from Los Angeles. This is his home track. It's a dream job for him, and I think he's going to do a good job.
Yeah, I kind of think of announcers as like referees or officials in sports. If you notice them, it's probably a bad thing. If you don't notice them, they're probably doing a good job, as you were describing about you just call the race and whatnot. But I do also enjoy, like you were saying about Howard Cosell. I mean, we've had guys like Tom Durkin who, had some theatrics in their announcing, and I enjoy that as well. So I guess it's just an individual thing, as I said earlier. But one thing that I have appreciated about horse racing is the inclusion of foreign accents. And that, it's an international sport. I don't know of any foreign announcers in the NFL or the NBA or the NHL that I can think of. So it has been unique. But, with Rona and Denman, retiring, and Mark Johnson's gone. And so we've kind of lost some of that. Yeah, that's true.
Robert Geller was at Emerald Downs, and he's moved on to Woodbine. So he is probably the most, at the biggest track as far as a year-round presence with an accent. I thought when Churchill hired Mark Johnson, who's a fine race caller, I just thought that was an odd fit for the track that hosts the Kentucky Derby. And now they have, I think, one of the best young announcers, best announcers, period, calling the races, Travis Stone.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.